story begins in the early 15th century. A battle takes place between England and the rebellious Scots. The English army wins, led by a brave knight named Hotspur. After the victory, they gather for a celebration feast. However, Hotspur is upset with the king as the king refuses to pay the ransom for Hotspur's cousin, who is being held by rebels in Wales. The king says the cousin is not a prisoner, but a traitor who joined the rebels. This makes Hotspur very angry, and he reminds the king that his family has been loyal for years. Then he storms out of the room. Meanwhile, Prince Hal, the eldest son of the king, walks through town with his friend John, a retired knight. Then a royal messenger finds Hal and asks to speak with him. Hal follows him and learns that the king is very sick and wants to see him. But Hal refuses as he has no interest in the crown and chooses to stay away from the palace. Instead, Hal spends most of his day drinking with his friends and the night with women. The next day, John convinces Hal to visit his father, and Hal finally goes to the palace. There, the king tells him that he will not become the next king. Instead, the younger brother, Thomas, will take the throne. Thomas is also given the task of leading a battle against Hotspur the next day. Hal says he never wanted to be king and tries to convince Thomas not to fight in a war that their father started. But Thomas ignores him as he wants the glory, and Hal leaves disappointed. The next day, Thomas meets with Lord Dorset to plan the battle. However, Hal arrives without an invitation. Even though Thomas objects, Hal sends a message to Hotspur asking for a one-on-one duel. He says this can stop a full battle and save many lives. Thomas disagrees, but Hal says he only wants to protect him and the soldiers. At the same time, Hotspur's father tries to talk him out of the duel and wants them to fight as an army. But Hotspur accepts Hal's challenge. Next, Hal and Hotspur fight in front of their armies. Both are strong and skilled, and the duel is intense. In the end, Hal wins by stabbing Hotspur in the neck. Then he asks Thomas to leave with him, warning that war will only bring death. But Thomas gets angry and feels like Hal stole the glory from what was supposed to be his first real battle. That night, Hal is full of guilt for killing a man. John tries to comfort him and shares his own experience with war and loss. A few days later, a royal advisor and chief of justice named William visits Hal. He tells Hal that the king is dying, but Hal does not seem to care. William warns him that although the king was cruel, the kingdom will suffer more without his leadership. He tells Hal that he must become king now because Thomas has died in battle in Wales. Hearing this, Hal becomes furious and rushes to the palace. He watches as his father dies, mumbling that Hal must be king. Everyone in the room hears these final words, and after the king dies, they bow to Hal. Next, William goes to Hal's home to gather his belongings and prepare for the transition, but John is forced to leave in disgrace. That same day, Hal is crowned King of England. Many neighboring kingdoms send expensive gifts to honor the new king. However, Hal returns the gifts to his close relatives. He gives a beautiful vase to his younger sister, Philippa, who is the Queen of Denmark. He then gives a clockwork bird to his cousin, Cambridge. But the son of the King of France sends him only a simple leather ball with no message. Hal keeps the ball quietly to himself, wondering its message. The next morning, William tells Hal that the ball is an insult and says the French want to provoke him. But Hal refuses to take the bait. He says he does not want to start a new war. Instead, he wants to end the wars that his father began. He even agrees to pay the ransom for Hotspur's cousin and free him. Later, Philippa warns Hal to be careful with whom he trusts. She tells him that many people at his table are not honest and often hide the truth. A few days later, Hal listens to the Archbishop, who explains that the King of France doesn't have a legal claim to the throne and that this war could be justified. He also says the war will help them later claim Jerusalem, something Hal's father always wanted. Hal is shocked by how many wars his father planned. Then he stands before the court and declares that he has no interest in taking France or Jerusalem. However, the court is displeased with his decision. Later, William warns Hal that France is trying to provoke him. He says that ignoring the threat might make Hal look weak. Meanwhile, John struggles with his new life. People mock him, saying he was left behind after Hal became king. He feels disrespected and forgotten. Later that day, Hal visits a captured assassin who was sent to kill him. The man admits he was sent by the King of France. Despite this, Hal still wants peace, but the council is furious and calls this a clear act of war. William warns Hal that doing nothing will weaken the throne, and people in both France and England will see him as soft. Hal is then forced to write a message to the King of France. He says that if the king truly wants war, he should bring his full army and face Hal openly instead of sending assassins. Next, French envoys approach Cambridge and Grey to talk about the new king. Hearing this, the two nobles go straight to William and share the conversation. Cambridge says that the French deny sending the assassin. Grey adds that he has little faith in Hal, reminding everyone that Hal was just a drunk weeks ago. However, William calms them, saying he will speak to Hal about the matter. William then meets with Hal and tells him that, in order to keep the promise he made to the people, he must now decide what to do about France. The next day, Hal gathers his council and announces that England is now at war with France. Then he turns to Grey and Cambridge and tells them they will be executed in the morning for conspiring with the enemy. The following morning, the punishment is carried out. Afterward, Hal goes to a bar to find John, the only person he fully trusts. John feels abandoned and tells Hal that he was left to rot. But after seeing Hal's current position and seriousness, he agrees to join him. A few days later, John is introduced as the new marshal to lead England's army. Soon, preparations for war begin. Hal must now face his first major battle, with John leading the troops. Eventually, the English fleet sails to France. They expect to find a French army waiting on the shore, but instead they land on empty ground. They march through a deserted village with no resistance. Then Hal and his men set up camp and prepare their catapults to attack Harfleur Castle, which is nearby. Day after day they launch attacks, but the castle holds strong. After seeing the siege fail, Hal's council and the archbishop advise him to send soldiers uphill for a direct attack. Hal refuses because it would lead to many deaths. Fortunately, the people of Harfleur surrender, and their leader begs Hal to spare the women and children. Hal agrees and gives them 1 day to evacuate. While they wait, the Dauphin, the heir to the French throne, arrives to speak with Hal. He mocks Hal and describes in disturbing detail how his army will destroy the English. Hal does not respond to the insults and instead orders John to move the army forward. One day, while the English camp, 3 children wander into the woods to play. The Dauphin's men find them, kill 2 of the boys, and send the 3rd back carrying the severed head of one of them. Hal is horrified and he orders John to kill all the French prisoners they captured earlier from Harfleur. But John refuses, reminding Hal that he is not the kind of man who would do such a thing. After this, the English army marches deeper into French territory. Eventually, they are met by a much larger French force. That night, Hal's advisors suggest retreating as they are outnumbered and in a weak position. But John offers a bold plan. He says that heavy rain is coming and the ground will become soft and muddy. He explains that the French army, with their heavy armor and horses, will get stuck in the mud. At that moment, John suggests sending in lightly armed, unmounted soldiers to move quickly through the mess and attack. Meanwhile, English archers will fire from behind. Lord Dorset doubts the plan. He says there is no guarantee it will rain, and the French may already know this weakness. Hal decides they will only follow the plan if it rains that night. Later that night, heavy rain falls just as John predicted. John puts on his armor, ready for war. In the morning, Hal is confused when he sees John wearing armor, since John was the one who suggested fighting without it. But John explains that someone must draw the French army out and make them believe the fight has already begun. He tells Hal to wait and not join the battle too early. Before the battle starts, Hal takes a few of his men and approaches the Dauphin. He offers to settle the war through single combat to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. But the Dauphin laughs and accuses Hal of being afraid. He refuses the challenge, and with no other choice, Hal returns and prepares for a full battle. Back with his army, Hal gives a powerful speech. He tells his men that the most important goal is to bring unity and peace to England under one crown. His words inspire the soldiers, and they prepare for war. Then John and his men move forward as planned, while the rest of the English troops wait in place. When the first wave of French soldiers charges, the English archers launch a deadly rain of arrows. Even though many are hit, the French keep marching through the mud and clash with John's group. John fights fiercely, but more French troops arrive to overwhelm the English front lines. Another wave of arrows flies from the archers. Once Hal sees that the full French force is in the mud, he leads the rest of his troops into the battle. They wear no armor and move quickly across the wet field. Just as John predicted, the unarmored English soldiers gain the advantage. The heavy French armor slows them down, and the rain makes the ground worse. Many French soldiers fall, and the English begin to dominate the battle. Eventually, horns sound to signal the end of the fight. The French surrender. Then the Dauphin tries to challenge Hal to single combat again, but he can barely move because of his heavy armor and the thick mud. Hal watches for a moment, then orders his men to finish him. By that, the battle ends with a clear English victory. Through the ruins of the battlefield, Hal walks alone and finds John lying dead. Overcome with grief, he kneels beside him and cries. Later, Hal is told that the prisoners they captured are unruly and might escape if the French regroup. Now fully aware of the brutal reality of war, Hal orders his men to kill all the prisoners. After a few days, the King of France visits Hal and offers a peaceful surrender. As part of the agreement, he proposes that Hal marry his daughter, Princess Catherine, to unite the two kingdoms and prevent future wars. Hal then accepts the offer and returns to England. On the wedding day, Hal speaks with Catherine in private. She asks him why he invaded France when he had no real reason to do so. Hal tells her about the assassin who tried to kill him, but Catherine insists that neither the King of France nor the Dauphin sent any assassin. Hal then brings up the ball that was sent to him as an insult. Catherine laughs and says a ball is not a reason to shed so much blood. At that moment, Hal remembers what his sister once told him, to be careful about whom he trusts. He then begins to suspect he was manipulated. Next, Hal goes to confront William. He asks how taking over France benefits him and questions how William found the assassin. William then struggles to give a convincing answer. After more pressing questions, William finally admits that he orchestrated the events to start the war, saying it was the only way to bring peace. But Hal is furious, as this is not the peace he wanted. Without another word, he kills William. After that, Hal returns to Catherine. He asked her to always tell him the truth, no matter what she gives him her word. As a new era of peace begins, the people of England cheer for their king, the one who brought peace out of chaos. They shout his name with pride, King Henry, the end.